Snow slammed her tray down on the counter just as the guy grabbed her wrist. I said no, she snapped, yanking her arm back. The bar was loud, the Friday night crowd rowdy, but that didn't stop the guy from leaning in closer, the stench of beer thick on his breath. Come on, sweetheart, one drink. You owe me for the tip. I owe you nothing, she said, jaw tight. Her shift was almost over and she was exhausted. She didn't have time for drunks who thought a few dollars bought them the right to touch her. Before he could open his mouth again, a tall figure stepped between them. Let go of her, the man said, voice cool but sharp. The drunk laughed. Who the hell are you? The man didn't answer. His eyes, steel gray and completely calm, were locked on the guy's hand. You have 3 seconds. The guy scoffed but dropped Snow's wrist. Whatever, man. He stumbled back into the crowd. Snow blinked up at her unexpected savior. He wasn't a regular. She would have remembered him. Expensive suit, clean-shaven jaw, eyes that seemed to see everything. He didn't belong here. He turned to her. You okay? Yeah, she said, still stunned. Thanks. I don't like seeing women get grabbed, he said with a slight shrug, like it wasn't a big deal. But the way he'd stepped in casual, confident, like he'd done it 1,000 times, left her pulse racing. I'm Snow, she added, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. And you definitely don't look like you belong in this dive. His lips twitched. Ford Hatcher. Of course his name was Ford. It suited him, solid, direct, expensive. She raised an eyebrow. You got a last name that sounds like a car and you're dressed like a man who owns 10 of them. What are you doing in a bar like this? He looked around the dim, sticky-floored bar. Bad decision. I was supposed to meet a friend. He bailed. Well, you saved me from a beer-soaked creep, so not a total waste of your time. She hesitated. Can I buy you a drink? I mean, I get an employee discount, he chuckled. Sure. She poured him a whiskey and leaned on the bar. So what do you do, Ford Hatcher? I work in tech, he said simply. Startups, mostly. Let me guess, apps that make people lazier. Actually, he said, amused, I build security platforms, but yeah, I've heard worse. She smiled. Well, thanks again for stepping in. He studied her for a second. You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of thing. I don't usually, she said, but some guys think a waitress uniform means they own you for the night. His jaw tightened just slightly. That's not right. Snow didn't know why she was still talking to him. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, like he wasn't just staring at her body but actually seeing her. You always play hero in bars? She asked. No, just when it matters, she laughed. You're smooth. He leaned in slightly. Only when I mean it. Her stomach flipped. She straightened. Well, I've got to finish closing, but thanks again. Ford placed a crisp $100 bill on the bar. I think I owe you this one. That's way too much. He didn't blink. Consider it hazard pay. She watched him walk out, stunned. No man had ever defended her like that, then dropped 100 like it meant nothing. And no man had ever made her feel this thrown off in the span of 5 minutes. Snow didn't expect to see him again, but 3 days later, he was back. This time, he wore jeans and a leather jacket like he was trying to blend in. It didn't work. You again, she said, pouring him a whiskey. You remember me. You're not exactly forgettable, he grinned. Good. From that night on, Ford started showing up every few days, always sat at the bar. Always ordered the same drink, always asked about her day, and slowly the wall she kept up with every man began to crack. So, what's your story? He asked one night when the bar quieted down. She hesitated. I'm not that interesting. I doubt that. She looked at him. I'm 27. I've been working here since I was 19. My mom passed, my dad left. I've got bills, I've got debt, and I can't afford to dream bigger than rent and groceries. Ford didn't flinch. He didn't pity her either. He just nodded. What about you? She asked. He sipped his whiskey. I grew up in Colorado. My parents ran a diner. I started coding in high school, sold my first company at 25. Her mouth parted. Wait, what? I'm not just a guy in a suit, Snow. You're a millionaire. He didn't say yes. He didn't have to. She blinked. So you just wander into random bars for fun. I wandered into this one and met you. Worked out pretty well. Her chest tightened. You're serious? I don't waste time, he said, and I don't fake interest. Snow didn't know what to do with that. A man like Ford didn't just fall into your life. And he sure as hell didn't stay, but he kept coming back. And one night, after a quiet dinner in the back alley behind the bar takeout from a high-end place he insisted on picking up, he looked at her and said, "I want to see you outside of this place." Her heart thudded. "Like a date?" He nodded once. "Like a real one," she hesitated, unsure. "I don't fit in your world." "You fit in mine just fine," he said. "Let me prove it." She stared at him, her heart pounding, her mind screaming all the reasons it wouldn't work. But her mouth said, "Okay." And just like that, everything changed. The restaurant was perched 5 stories above the city, its terrace wrapped in soft amber lights that shimmered like fireflies against the dark skyline. Snow had never been in a place where the waiters wore cufflinks or where the menu didn't list prices. She tugged at the sleeve of the navy silk blouse Ford had sent to her apartment earlier that day, nestled in a box that had arrived with a handwritten note. "Dinner. 8. Wear this." She hadn't wanted to accept it, but she also hadn't been able to stop her fingers from tracing the fabric or her heart from thudding at the way he'd written her name. "You look like you belong here," Ford said, pulling out her chair as she approached the table. His voice was low, steady, but there was something in the way he looked at her that made her stomach twist. Not possessive, not impressed, just present. Snow sat slowly. "I feel like I'm impersonating someone richer." "Good. That means you're doing it right," he said, settling across from her. "But for the record, you're not impersonating anyone." The waiter arrived with champagne already chilled, pouring into crystal flutes as if they'd been there a dozen times. Snow lifted her glass, the bubbles catching the golden light. "I don't drink champagne often," she admitted. Ford leaned back. "It's overrated unless it's with you." She tilted her head. "You always talk like you're trying to win a bet." "No, I talk like I mean it. You're just not used to being taken seriously." That hit harder than she expected. She looked away, down at the polished silverware. "Maybe I'm not." Ford didn't push. Instead, he shifted the conversation. "Tell me something you've never told anyone." Snow blinked. "That's a bold ask." "I'll go first," he said. "When I was 16, I rewired the diner's register to track tips. My mom grounded me for a week, but my dad secretly thanked me. They split the tips more fairly after that." She tried not to laugh. "You hacked your family's business?" "I optimized it." Snow swirled her glass. "Okay." "When I was 13, I used to sneak into the back of the community theater and watch rehearsals. I'd sit behind the curtain and pretend I was part of the cast." "Why didn't you audition?" She shrugged. "Couldn't afford the costume fees." Ford's face didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "You still remember the plays?" "All of them. My favorite was The Glass Menagerie. I used to whisper Laura's lines under my breath." He leaned forward. "I'd pay to see that." She lifted a brow. "You'd pay to see a broke waitress recite Tennessee Williams." "I don't care what you do. I care how you do it." Snow set her glass down. "Why are you really here, Ford?" His gaze didn't waver. "Because I want to know what it feels like to be around someone who doesn't want anything from me." She narrowed her eyes. "You think I don't want anything?" "I think you don't fake anything. That's rare." The waiter returned with 2 plates that looked like art exhibits. Snow blinked at hers, not entirely sure if she was supposed to eat it or frame it. Ford grinned. "Try it. If it's terrible, we'll get tacos." She took a bite and closed her eyes. "Okay, that's unfairly good." He tapped his glass gently. "I'll take that as a win." She hesitated, then said, "What's the worst thing about having money?" Ford didn't answer immediately. "You stop hearing the word no, and eventually you start losing track of why you ever wanted the yes." Snow studied him. "What about the best part?" He looked at her directly. "Being able to change someone else's life without needing anything in return." She didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing, just let the quiet between them settle into something warm. After dinner, he didn't suggest a car. Instead, they walked, 5 blocks through the heart of the city under streetlights and the faint buzz of neon signs. Her heels clicked against the pavement, but he matched her pace, never once trying to rush her. "I like walking," she said. "It makes the city feel smaller. Or maybe it makes us feel bigger," Ford replied. They stopped at a corner, waiting for the light to change. A man with a guitar played softly on the curb. Snow reached into her purse and dropped a few bills into his case. Ford watched her. "You always do that?" I know what it's like to feel invisible." The light turned. They crossed in silence. When they reached her apartment building, she paused on the steps. "I should go up," he nodded. "I'm not coming in." "I didn't think you would." Ford stepped back. "But I will call you tomorrow, and I'm going to ask you to dinner again, somewhere without menus this time." She laughed softly. "That's either a date or a kidnapping. I'll let you decide." Snow turned, hand on the railing, then looked back. "Why me, Ford?" He didn't smile. "Just said because you don't need me, and that makes me want to be around you more than anyone else." She didn't answer, just walked upstairs, heart pounding, wondering what the hell she'd just gotten herself into, and why it already felt like she didn't want to get out. Snow was still barefoot when she opened her door and found Ford standing there, holding a paper bag and 2 coffees. "You said you worked mornings," he said, glancing down at her oversized t-shirt and messy bun. "I figured you hadn't eaten." "You're not wrong," she muttered, stepping aside to let him in. "But you didn't have to, I wanted to," Ford replied, walking past the couch and setting the bag on the kitchen counter. "And I wasn't sure if you'd answer your phone." "I didn't," she said, folding her arms. "I've been thinking," he looked at her then, steady. "About you and me," she said. "This whole thing feels like it's moving fast." Ford nodded. "It is. That doesn't bother you." "It would if I thought it was the wrong direction." Snow pulled out a stool and sat. The apartment was small, just a studio with a divider between the bed and the kitchen, but he didn't look uncomfortable. If anything, he seemed more at ease here than he had at the rooftop restaurant. "You're not what I expected," she said. He handed her a coffee. "Neither are you." "You didn't even blink when you saw how I live," she said, studying him. "Most guys with money would have made some comment. Or tried to fix it." "I'm not here to fix you, Snow." She took a sip, the warmth grounding her. "Then what are you here for?" Ford leaned against the counter, arms folded. "To know you, all of it. Messy parts, quiet parts, things you don't show anyone because you think they'll leave." She exhaled slowly. "You talk like this is already something real." "It is to me." Snow stared into her coffee. "I've got nothing to offer you. You have honesty, fire. 1,000 things you're too used to hiding, and none of that has a price tag." She looked up at him. "You always this sure about people?" "No," he said, "just this once." There was a knock at the door, sharp and impatient. Snow frowned and stood. When she opened it, a man in a suit stood there, mid-30s, holding a clipboard and looking uncomfortable. "Miss Rivera." "Yeah, I'm here on behalf of Hatcher Group. We need access to the building's rooftop. There's a scheduled installation." Ford appeared behind her. "That's been moved to next week." The man startled. "Mr. Hatcher, I didn't realize you were—" "I'll handle it," Ford said, voice clipped. The man nodded quickly and turned on his heel. Snow shut the door slowly, turning to face him. "Hatcher Group," he held her gaze. "I own the company that bought this building last month." She stared at him, heart suddenly racing for a different reason. "You own my building?" "I didn't plan it that way. I didn't even know you lived here until you mentioned the street last week." "And you didn't think to tell me." "I was going to," he said, "but I didn't want you to think I was trying to control anything." She stepped back. "But you are, aren't you? You show up with breakfast, say all the right things, and now I find out you literally own the roof over my head. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" He walked toward her slowly, careful. "I've spent years around people who smile while calculating how much they can take from me. You're the first person who makes me want to give without expecting anything back." Snow's throat tightened. "That's not fair. You can give without it meaning anything. I can't. I feel it every time." "I don't want you to feel small, Snow. I want you to feel seen." She sat again, this time on the edge of the bed, her voice quieter. "I've had people see pieces of me before, the easy parts, the fun parts. No one stays when things get hard." Ford sat across from her, not touching, just close enough to feel the weight of what lay between them. "I don't scare easy." She looked at him. "You say that now. Try me." There was a long silence. Then she said very softly, "I'm 2 months behind on rent." He didn't react, didn't flinch. "Okay. I've got a busted water heater that leaks every other day." "Okay. And I haven't been to a doctor since I was 21. He nodded once. "We'll fix it." She blinked. I'm not walking away from this, Snow, not because you're struggling, especially not because of that." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. This is yours. She didn't take it. What is it, Elise? Rent-free for the next 6 months. You can sign it or not. But it's yours. She stared at him. I didn't ask for charity. And I'm not offering it. I'm offering peace of mind. So when you think about us, you're not thinking about bills or broken water pipes. You're thinking about whether or not you want me. She swallowed hard. That's a lot. I know. Snow looked down at the envelope, then back at him. You're serious about this? I've never been more serious. She didn't reach for it, but she didn't push it away either. Instead, she stood slowly, walked to the window, and looked out at the street below. People bustled past, carrying groceries, holding hands, living lives that didn't feel like hers anymore. When she turned back, her eyes were glassy but steady. What happens if I fall for you? His voice was quiet. Then I'll catch you. Snow stepped out of the elevator and into the lobby of the Hatcher Group headquarters, her boots echoing on the marble floor. The receptionist barely looked up before motioning her toward the private elevator at the end of the hallway, as if she'd been expected. As if she belonged, she didn't, not really, but she was here anyway. Ford had left her apartment that morning without saying much, just a kiss on the forehead, a quiet look, and the words, "You'll know when you're ready." She hadn't touched the lease he'd left. It was still on her kitchen counter, untouched. But she was here now, standing in the very heart of his world. The elevator doors opened onto a floor that didn't look like an office so much as a penthouse with desks. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched behind a long glass wall, and beyond that, Ford stood, hands in his pockets, staring out across the skyline. He turned when she entered, expression unreadable. She walked toward him slowly. "This place is quiet. We don't do noise here," he said. "Just pressure. Looks expensive." "It is." Snow stopped just inside the office. "You didn't tell me your company was on the cover of Forbes last month." He raised an eyebrow. "You looked me up." "I wanted to know if I was falling for a guy or an illusion." Ford stepped closer. "And you're not an illusion," she said, "but you terrify me." His eyes softened. "Because of the money?" "No," she said. "Because you see through me like no one ever has, and I keep waiting for the moment when that becomes too much." He reached for her hand, not pulling, just holding. "That moment isn't coming." Snow's voice dropped. "You make it hard to hold my ground." "Then let me stand there with you." She looked at him for a long time before speaking. "I didn't sign the lease. I didn't expect you to. I'm not ready to take handouts." "It wasn't a handout, I know," she said. "But I need to do this my way. I need to keep my job. I need to keep my place for now, not because I don't trust you, but because I'm still learning to trust myself." Ford nodded once. "That's yours to have. I won't take it from you." She exhaled slowly. "But I don't want to push you away either." "You're not," he said. "You're showing me who you are. That's all I've ever wanted." Snow stepped closer. "Do you ever slow down?" He tilted his head. "What do you mean? You run a company. You move through life like nothing can touch you, but when do you actually stop and breathe?" He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't, not until you." She blinked. "Me? You're the only thing that's made me want to stay in one place." Snow's chest tightened. "That's a lot to carry." "I'm not asking you to carry it," he said. "I'm asking you to let me walk beside you." Her voice caught. "What if I fall harder than I mean to?" "Then I'll fall with you." There was a long silence between them, full of weight and warmth. Then Ford reached behind his desk and pulled out a slim black box. Snow froze. "What is that?" He opened it slowly. Inside was a bracelet, delicate platinum set with a single opal in the center. She stared at it. "You didn't have to. I didn't buy it," he said. "My mother wore it every day until she passed. She left it to me. Told me to give it to the woman I couldn't live without." Snow looked up at him, heart in her throat. "Ford, I don't want to rush you. I don't want to scare you, but I know what this is. I know what we are." She hesitated, then reached out and touched the bracelet with trembling fingers. "I don't know if I'm ready for forever." "You don't have to be," he said. "Just be ready for tomorrow." Tears stung her eyes. "I think I can do that." He fastened the bracelet around her wrist, his thumb brushing her skin. "You're not alone anymore, Snow." She leaned into him, the weight of every wall she'd carried finally giving way. "I don't want to be." He kissed her temple. "Then don't be." Later that night, he took her to a rooftop, one she'd never seen before, blanketed in string lights and surrounded by tall hedges that blocked out the city. A private chef served them dinner under the stars. There was no menu, no waitstaff, just the two of them and the quiet hum of the city below. Snow looked around in disbelief. "You planned this," Ford nodded. "I wanted to give you something that didn't come with conditions, just space, just us." She reached across the table and took his hand. "You're not the man I thought I met that night." "Neither are you," he said. "You're so much more." She smiled slowly. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Ford stood, walked around the table, and pulled her to her feet. "Then let me say it first." He cupped her face, his voice low and certain. "I love you, Snow Rivera, not because you need saving, but because you taught me how to stop running." She kissed him, under the stars and the lights and the sky that had never felt so wide. And in that moment, she knew there was no going back, not to the girl who hid behind defenses, not to the life where love felt like a risk, because now it felt like home. Snow stepped through the carved wooden doors of the private gallery, unsure what Ford had planned, only that he'd insisted she come alone. The scent of fresh paint lingered in the air, mingling with the faintest trace of lemon and linen, like the room had been polished until it gleamed. The space was dimly lit, warm and quiet, with a large white curtain stretching across the far wall. She turned slowly, eyes adjusting to the soft glow from the wall sconces. No one else was there. "Ford," she called, her voice bouncing gently off the high ceilings. Footsteps approached from behind a partition. He appeared in a navy button-down and dark trousers, sleeves rolled up, his expression unreadable. "You came," he said. "You didn't give me much of a choice," she replied, then added softly, "but I wanted to." He motioned for her to follow him. "I've been working on something. I needed time to finish it." She glanced around. "Is this your gallery?" "It's a space I use when I need to think," he said. "And when I want to create something personal, you paint." "I hire painters." "But this one I commissioned." He stopped in front of the curtain, resting his hand on the rope beside it. "I wanted you to see this first, because it's yours." Snow's breath caught. "What do you mean?" He pulled the rope. The curtain fell away. The mural spanned the entire wall, an abstract piece, sweeping and bright, with swirling blues and golds tangled together. In the center, a figure stood barefoot in a pool of light, her hands open, her hair caught in a gust of wind she didn't fight. The emotion it carried hit her in a way she couldn't name. Ford spoke beside her. "It's called after the storm." Snow blinked, finding her voice. "She's not hiding." "No," he said. "She's finally letting herself be seen." Her eyes stung. "Why would you do this?" "Because I needed to show you what I see when I look at you." She turned to him. "I'm not that fearless." "You're braver than anyone I've ever known," he said. "You walk through fire and still find room to care about other people. That's not weakness. That's strength." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "I don't know how to live in your world." "Then let's build one together," he said. "One that's ours." Snow swallowed. "I don't want to wonder anymore. I don't want to keep waiting for the moment this ends." "It won't," Ford said, "because I've already made up my mind." He pulled a small black box from his pocket and opened it, a ring. Simple, elegant, with a single rose-cut diamond set in a gold band that shimmered like it had been dipped in morning sun. "I didn't want to do this until I knew it wouldn't scare you away, but I can't wait anymore." Her lips parted, but no words came. "I'm not asking you to change. I'm not asking you to give anything up. I'm asking you to stay exactly who you are and let me love you every day for the rest of my life." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't brush them away. She whispered, "Yes." Ford slipped the ring onto her finger. "Then it's done." He kissed her, there in front of the mural that captured everything she'd never said out loud. Months passed. The bar where she once served drinks now had a new owner, one who'd added a stage, a community board, and a scholarship fund in her name. Snow still visited sometimes, not to work, but to talk to the girls behind the counter. To remind them what it looked like to stand up and walk out of a life that no longer fit. She didn't move out of her apartment right away. Ford never pushed. But one morning, she woke up beside him in the penthouse overlooking the city and realized she hadn't been back to her old place in weeks. She gave up the lease without ceremony and didn't look back. Their wedding was held on a vineyard outside of Santa Barbara, surrounded by orange blossoms and the hum of live strings. She wore a dress with sleeves that fluttered like wings, and he wore no tie at all. Just a white shirt, open at the collar, his hand in hers like it had always belonged there. They didn't write vows, they didn't need to. Afterward, they danced under lanterns, barefoot in the grass, and when the music faded, Ford led her away from the crowd to a small wooden cottage behind the vines. "I bought this place a few months ago," he said, unlocking the door. Snow stepped inside. The cottage smelled of cedar and lavender, its windows open to the breeze. On the table sat a small stack of blank notebooks, each one tied with a silk ribbon. He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You said once you couldn't afford to dream," she turned in his arms. "And now, he whispered, "you write them down, every one." She kissed him slowly, the kind of kiss that didn't need to lead anywhere, it simply was. Years later, they sat on the porch of that same cottage, 2 mugs of coffee between them and a manuscript on Snow's lap, her name printed across the top in bold font. Ford rested his hand on her knee. "You did it." She leaned against his shoulder. "We did." Their daughter, barely 4, ran barefoot through the vineyard rows, a ribbon trailing from her hand and laughter spilling behind her like sunlight. Snow smiled. "I used to think love had to hurt to be real." Ford kissed the top of her head. "And now," she looked out across the land they'd built together. "Now I know better." They stayed like that, wrapped in each other, in peace, in clarity, in the life they'd chosen and the love that had made it possible. And for the first time, Snow wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. There was nothing left to fear, only everything to live.